Well, there doesn't appear to be anybody here that wants a bill introduction, so it's mute. Okay, we will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 398. Eileen, can you give us an overview?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill 398 authorizes the Commissioner of Insurance to set the amount of certain fees and requires publication of those fees in the Kansas Register. If you think back to last year, in House Bill 2090, the legislature authorized the Commissioner of Insurance to set the amount of certain licensing fees for agents and public adjusters. The bill changed the fee amount at that time and established that as a ceiling for the fee and gave the commissioner discretion to set the fee up to that amount and then publish the amount in the register. Senate Bill 398 would replicate the commissioner's discretion from 2090 in setting the fees contained in the 25 statutes that I list there. Rather than reading the list to you, I will tell you that in addition to giving the commissioner authorization to set those fees, each of the sections also requires the commissioner to set the amount of fee for the forthcoming year by December 1st and also, again, publish it in the register. And with that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Eileen. Committee, are there questions? I see none. Thank you. Okay, on proponent testimony, we have Eric Turek with the Kansas Insurance Department. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Eric Turek with the Kansas Insurance Department, and we appreciate the opportunity to introduce Senate Bill 398 and the opportunity to provide proponent testimony. I do want to note, and I don't believe Eileen had mentioned this though in her memorandum she does allude to this. House Bill 2090 from last year, one of the policy provisions in that bill afforded the commissioner the opportunity to lower licensure fees for agents and agencies. And as she stated here at this podium about 3 weeks ago, we have successfully done that at the department. The commissioner decided to lower fees to the tune of $1.2 million for agents and agencies for this calendar year. And as described in statute, we did publish those fees last year. And so we want to build off of the successes of that bill. And in Senate Bill 398, it's essentially the same thing. There are these statutory limits or these thresholds that fees are set to, and we are seeking the flexibility to lower fees from that amount for about a little bit more than 100 different fees in Chapter 40. So these pertain to admissions, certificates of authority, licensure, renewals, et cetera. So I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Eric, thank you very much. Committee, are there questions? Evidently did a great job of explaining it. Thank you very much. Are there any additional proponents that wish to speak on Senate Bill 398? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition of 398? Is there any neutral testimony on 398? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 398. We will now turn our attention to a hearing on Senate Bill 405. Eileen, would you give us an overview on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill 405 is holding a control person liable for violations of the Kansas Uniform Securities Act by an individual subject to discipline under the act unless the control person was unaware and could not have reasonably known of the individual's violations. So Senate Bill 405 amends the Kansas Uniform Securities Act relating to violations of the act. And under current law, only an individual in control of someone violating the act under certain circumstances listed in 17-12A412 subsection D may be disciplined by the administrator. Senate Bill 405 would add a provision to the statute stating that a person that directly or indirectly controls a person who is engaging, about to engage, or has engaged in an action constituting a violation of the act or a rule or regulation promulgated under the act may be held to the same discipline as the violating person unless that controlled person did not know and could not have reasonably known of the violating person's actions or behavior. And with that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Eileen. Committee, are there questions? Senator Pittman?
Just real quick, and we'll hear from the conferee, but this obviously doesn't apply to somebody who controls somebody who previously had done an act but had been under the control of another person, right?
I believe the first controlling person would be,
The one in,
right, if there is a subsequent controlling person, the first controlling person would be responsible for that person's actions.
okay, thanks.
Committee, are there additional questions? Senator Warren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Eileen. So the purpose of 405 is to, if I'm understanding this correctly, give the control person protection from liability or to make them liable, the control person?
To make them liable.
make
It
them
allows the department or the securities administrator to go after those individuals who should have known, could reasonably have known that the violating person was violating the Securities Act.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions of Eileen? I see none. Thank you. We will now turn to proponent testimony, and we have Eric back.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Eric Turek with the Kansas Insurance Department. Senate Bill 405 comes from the security side of our operations at the department, and as you know, the department registers investment advisors, investment advisor representatives, broker-dealers, and broker-dealer agents, and for simplicity, I will refer to those individuals as registrants. And so in current law, the insurance department and our securities division, we are able to take action against individuals who violate securities law, registrants who violate securities law. We can take administrative action, civil action, and criminal action against those individuals. Additionally, traditionally, commonly at a firm, there will be a control person, and the control person is a supervisor, a manager, an owner of a company, something of that sort. And oftentimes they will be a registrant themselves, so they will be an investment advisor representative, and they'll be overseeing the firm, they'll be overseeing other registrants, and we are able to take action against those individuals. But who the department is not able to take action against are the individuals who are a control person, but they are not a registrant, if that makes a lot of sense. So you have an owner of a firm, but the owner themselves is not a registrant. They're not an investment advisor representative. They're not a broker-dealer agent, but they oversee that firm. Or they oversee individual employees who are registrants. And so in cases where their employees or the firm is violating securities law, if their employees are are engaging in a Ponzi scheme, if they're falsifying documents or something of that sort, in current law, the department does not have the ability to go after those non-registered control persons, and this bill would hold them administratively and civilly liable for those violations when they reasonably should have known, or if they actually did know that illegal activity was taking place. I'd be happy to clarify and stand for questions.
Thank you, Eric. Committee, are there questions? Senator Pittman?
Thank you, Eric, for bringing this forward. Do other states have similar type laws available to go after the controlling person? Are we a standout in not allowing that?
Great question. I will work this afternoon to ensure that I get you an answer to that question. I will say that there have been instances where there are securities violations where the control person who was not a registrant, so the owner of a firm, was engaging in illegal activity, and they should have known that something was going on. These are individuals who are signing contracts, who are exercising standard supervision, and they really should have known, hey, a Ponzi scheme was happening under their watch. But unfortunately, we are not able to pursue those individuals, and that's the remedy here that we are trying to seek. But I'll get you that answer, definitely.
Okay. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Eric, thank you for your presentation. How often, what brought this bill up? Is there some history to this, or is this becoming a problem? Just wondered what activates.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of cases that I can chat with you at another time where, an owner of an LLC, which is a firm, was engaging in a legal activity, and again, these are individuals who are signing contracts, who know the revenues that are coming in, who have regular communication with their employees, but they have claimed they didn't know that something was taking place, where they really should have known. And we don't have, there's an enforcement gap in statute, and we are not able to take action against them. And so that's the impetus behind this bill.
Senator Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the whole thing on me, I mean, there could still be situations just because they're signing documents. If there's fraudulent stuff going on, I think it all comes back to knowingly involved or participating. I mean, you can get drug into court either way, but if you didn't participate or have any knowledge in it, you shouldn't be liable of it. I mean, people do fraudulent stuff all the time. It happens in banks, business, and, there's a lot of trust there, but you can always track that knowingly and not knowingly. The paper trails and the digital footprint will show one way or another. So, I don't know. I think it's, already trackable, but I mean, I could see your point here too.
And this does not violate any or alter any due process rights that currently exist. And then there are cases where a registrant is engaging in illegal activity and the control person may not know. Totally understandable, but for the cases that the control person does know, and they're not under our jurisdiction as a registrant, we just don't have the ability to even take action against them at all. And that's what we're trying to seek. And there are instances where, like I said, someone is keeping something very secret, they're hiding things, and so there are cases where the control person would not know.
Normally, with a digital footprint, you'll find that information through texts, emails, just transactions, so. Yeah.
Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just add, this sounds like a similar precedent that CMS does, because if CMS says if you've got an agent who is doing something fraudulently or whatever, they're not only held accountable, but so is the broker, so is the managing general agent, so is the insurance company. So anybody all along the way can say, well, I didn't know they were doing that, but everybody is held accountable and everybody can be brought in under those circumstances. Thank you.
Senator Warren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I understand the purpose of the bill. So I do have a question, though. So you've got an LLC that owns the company, and the LLC owners are not necessarily registrants. Let's assume they're not registrants, and there's no requirement that you have any background knowledge to be an LLC that owns these type of brokerage firms, right? So in order to catch the bad guys, I guess, that I hope there are few of them, but this amendment to the statute would create a duty of exercise of reasonable care on the LLC, the owners of the LLC, that currently under LLC law doesn't exist. Am I correct in that? Or you're basically creating a duty for, because in the exercise of reasonable care, did they know, could they have known? So I'm just wondering, is that the intent? You want to create an exercise of reasonable care and then a duty, and you set people up also then for some negligence claims, because if you breach a duty that's imposed in law like this, then you've set up the LLC owners, and I think then you've pierced the corporate veil. You've pierced the LLC, and then can go after the people individually. Do I have that right?
I will profess, I was following a little bit, and I'm not extremely familiar with business law, but, I will say that there have been instances where investor losses have exceeded more than millions of dollars, and where the owner, they did know, or they should have known, but unfortunately, because of the enforcement gap in current law, the department just has not been able to pursue these individuals on an administrative or civil level. Of course, we definitely go after the employees of those control persons, but there are just, I'd be happy to go over with you a couple cases in particular that are part of the public record about that.
Sure, yeah, it's just piercing the corporate veil is hard to do, and this would be a way to do it, if that's the intent here, is to show that, the protection provided to someone who's part of an LLC, you're not protected from engaging in wrongful behavior. It's not there to protect that. But it's just interesting that this would then be a duty imposed, I think, personally, on the LLC and incorporated and others to exercise a duty of reasonable care as far as what the deals are and the trading and the contracts and things like that. So, if that's a duty we want to impose, that's, I don't know, could impact Kansas businesses in a way maybe not anticipated. But anyway, just thinking out loud here as I'm considering.
I think Eileen's got some further clarification.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important to remember that members of an LLC have a fiduciary duty to the LLC, and part of that fiduciary duty is a duty of care. And that duty of care means that the members of the LLC shouldn't engage in anything that's against the purpose of the LLC, and that would include violations of law. So I'm not sure that this actually directly establishes a new duty imposed on LLC members. I think it can be looked at as a duty underneath the duty of care for LLC members.
Thank you. Is the duty owed to the customer, to the client?
That's a great question. I think I'm following your train of thought. And I kind of want to steer the conversation in a direction away from LLCs, perhaps. In current law, if a firm owner, it happens to be an investment advisor representative, this bill does not apply to them because the department is already able to take civil, administrative, and criminal action against those individuals. If they hire an individual to sell securities, but they are not registered in the state of Kansas, that would be an illegal act if that individual were to sell securities and they're not registered. And so that burden, or if you will, is already on the registrants, but if they just so happen to not be, the same owner or the same supervisor or control person were to not be a registrant, that's where this enforcement gap exists.
And how would a control person know that they're a control person and would be subject to this?
I'm looking for that definition right now. The control person definition is already in statute. I might look to the revisor for assistance here. I'm seeing page 5, subsection, well, that's control person liability. Sure.
While you're looking for that, I'm going to go back to your example, Eric, on an LLC. Let's say there's 1,000 members of this LLC, and you have one bad actor, and maybe there's someone who is more controlling, but they all have control. I think the section that says, unless the controlling person did not know or could not have reasonably known of the actions or behavior, then they would not be subject to this law. It's those that are controlling and supervising and should have known rather than.
Or did know.
Right.
May I follow up, Mr. Chair? I think, however, I understand the point. I think, however, on page 7, it says, in the exercise of reasonable care, you could have known. So in the example, I think all 1,000 members, if they had exercised reasonable care, could have known. Would they then have to be exercising reasonable care and investigate all of the transactions to make sure no illegal activity is going on as an owner of the
Sure,
LLC?
and you know, in terms of one control person for 1,000 individuals, you know, obviously there are other control persons within that structure, you know, but reasonable care could not have known. The purpose of that is to avoid an individual who perhaps was purposefully not trying to understand a certain action that probably was illegal. I think that's the impetus there for that.
And maybe you would get all the other 999 LLC members, because the proposed amendment at page 6 says a person that controls directly or indirectly. So, I mean, it seems broader than just that one LLC member who's.
And I would say that that language is really for flexibility. I mean, obviously, for the 1 to 1,000, you know, indirectly, absolutely. But, you know, can one individual oversee the contract, you know, with extreme scrutiny, the contracts, the actions of every individual? You know, perhaps not. But there's a hierarchy of control persons.
And there'll be some scope, because you've got, in the exercise of reasonable care, could have known. So had they made some inquiry? Did they have a duty to make some inquiry in order to exercise reasonable care, which they're required to do? So anyway, thank you for the conversation, and we could take this offline, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Pittman.
Oh, it's just, those are great points. You know, we can also go into what's reasonable and not reasonable, but that is not today. I think those are really great points, though. And I do wonder if maybe we should take a little bit of a look at some of the other states that do this, see if there are boundary conditions for these things, because I am worried about folks who might not understand the details of those that are the registered offenders, I guess you could say, not the people.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right word is for those people that were, what are they called, registered?
Registrants.
Registrants, thank you. Not registered offenders. But maybe there's an ownership pieces that where we couldn't expect them to understand the exact details and understand the details of some of those things, but that might be really highly subjective. It's a really good point.
You know, and I can be sure to get, not only, Senator, get you the answer in terms of what our other states are doing, especially our surrounding states. I mean, I'll be sure to send that to the committee.
Okay. I assume that the Securities Commissioner and those in the AG's office that would prosecute these would probably use some prosecutorial discretion in deciding who may have been responsible. I don't think they're in the habit of just filing suit against, in my example, 1,000 people when there may have been one that should have known. Committee, additional questions? Senator Pittman?
That's what makes me nervous, Mr. Chair, is that the AG might take a very subjective point of view on this, and if we don't define it in the law, one could abuse the statute. That's not well defined. Not any particular AG, just any kind of prosecutorial authority.
Senator Warren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this civil liability or just criminal?
So under current law, the department has the ability to take administrative, civil, and criminal against registrants. But for those control persons who are not registrants, this bill just seeks to grant the department the ability to take just administrative and civil action against the non-registered control persons.
So it does not create a private civil cause of action? Or does it? Meaning if you're the person who's been impacted by the illegal activity and you've lost millions of dollars because your broker did such and such and the control person, the indirect control person, whoever that is, knows that, can you, the resident of Kansas, sue these people for monetary damages?
Yeah, great question. I don't think that this changes anything in terms of that.
Well, what is the current law then? So well, that's unclear to me. Is that a yes or a no? You can civilly sue them as a resident of Kansas, or you can't?
I believe you absolutely can. What this does is this allows the Securities Commissioner to go after unlicensed control people.
And it allows a private person, if you're impacted by the control person, to sue in their own right.
I think that right exists today.
Yeah, this bill doesn't speak to that at all. Yep.
Well, it does with this control person liability, right? You're adding, you can now sue the control person. They have liability to you civilly if this bill's enacted.
I think that's only from the Securities Commissioner's standpoint, not private action from a citizen.
Okay, so the answer is no. Okay, the answer is no. Thank you.
Committee, any additional questions? Okay. Eric, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on Senate Bill 405? Okay, seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 405. Committee, we will meet tomorrow and Thursday. I'm hoping to get to a point soon where we can start working some of these bills. We are anticipating a very heavy week next week with hopefully the Money Transmitter Act and also the UCCC. So stay tuned to next week. We are